Well, and if we're going to speak about Arizona, we got to talk about the monsoon, right? And this week, it's really come alive. And regardless of whether or not Juliet does have an influence, no doubt the monsoon's in full swing. That moisture returning in a big way to the state of Arizona and the desert Southwest. Take a listen. The Valley of the Sun is back in the clouds and rain. I mean, clearly, right? The city this week recording its second wettest day of 2025 on Monday. Hard to reckon these images with the fact that the entire state of Arizona is dealing at least with a moderate drought. Phoenix is the 10th driest it's ever been at this point in the year since records began. So basically, what we're trying to say is that rain, it's welcome. The dust storms, they're not, but of course we've seen those play out this weekend and this week, but that's what you get in the desert. This is also what sometimes can set up, especially when you're dealing with a drier than usual monsoon. As we know, that monsoon begins in the summer and it can last through September, but we've not seen much of it. So this week has been a welcome relief, starting with the drought monitor. So, you know, as we're sitting here today on Wednesday, tomorrow we get a brand new drought monitor, wondering if there will be some changes. But as we had mentioned, the entire state, if we're abnormally dry, that's not a drought. Technically, the drought begins in the moderate stage and then it goes to severe, extreme, and exceptional. But Utah even, right?
Yeah.
All of Utah is dealing with at least a moderate drought. And some areas, especially around Tucson and in Phoenix, they've been in Arizona dealing with an extreme one.
I mean, this is the season when we try to capitalize on some of that moisture. And even the influx of moisture with Juliet, it's not going to be anything substantial enough that's going to lead to drought-breaking status. However, it'll aid in some of that for Southern California, and I think even less moisture enhancement into Arizona as it pivots off to the east.
I was real excited about 6 o'clock this morning, looking at some of the showers, trying to work into Flagstaff. Look at how they've just weakened. I mean, you're dealing with elevation too, so maybe radar's not picking up truly what's going on in Flagstaff, but some pretty decent storms this morning that have been trying to work into the high country. But aside from that, we're not dealing with much in the way. There is, at about 10,000 feet, so this is mid-levels of the atmosphere, we are noticing that dry air. The dry air is, at least this morning, in charge, but that will be changing, I think, as we head into the evening.
Yeah, I was noticing with San Diego even talking about drier coming in, but it's just today, and then by late tonight, you see that influx because of Juliet. So a little bit of maybe a break. I know Monday was very active in terms of monsoonal activity for Arizona. But this maybe enhances some of that.
I mean, season to date, it's not just Phoenix that is having one of their driest years on record. I mean, when you're among the top 10 and you're sitting late in the month of August, we're over halfway through the year. So we look at these numbers, we know that that deficit needs to be chiseled away. But a city like Los Angeles, even San Diego, August is a very dry month for San Diego. In fact, the driest month out of the entire calendar year. So when we see something like this, some of this tropical moisture trying to work to the north, we wonder, could San Diego have its wettest month on record?
Potentially, yeah.
given what we climatologically speaking see.
Yeah, I think, and you know, in terms of how far north that moisture will go, it doesn't look like LA has much to work with, even LA County. It really is Southern California, and maybe even, I know there's some talk that maybe some of the mountains further off to the south and eastern part of the state could see maybe a little bit more enhanced rain given the terrain. But yeah, for San Diego, it doesn't take much.
No, it does not.
To be the wettest August.
And keep in mind, in Southern California, that's what the National Weather Service offices have been talking about. They've been discussing this. It's not uncommon to get remnants of a tropical system to push northward. Overall, the pattern with that ridge of high pressure over Mexico, South Texas, that favors that fetch from the south to the north. But look at August. San Diego averages just 1/100 of an inch of rain. So if we get 1/100 of an inch, guess what? We've got our month's average.
And I guess it also depends on where that rain falls.
Yeah, the airport, right? Or like wherever the exact reporting station is. It's true.
But yeah, I think in terms of timing, you'll watch it come in late tonight. We'll see some of that play out into Thursday. Some of you could have some of the thunderstorms, so that would be even heavier rain. Otherwise, it's just scattered light rain. And by Thursday night, things should be winding down.
Which maybe the moisture will still be around. We might have some clouds, which would be uncommon for San Diego this time of year. But overall, yeah, it does look like it's a quick hit of it. But it does enhance this monsoon that we have in the southwest.
It does. And so we'll be talking about this for the next 24, 48 hours or so. In the meantime, rinse and repeat, do it again for the Central Plains, portions of the Rockies. Take a look at this video. This was captured in Johnstown, Colorado. It's just outside of Boulder. The greatest flash flood threat, it has shifted today further east of Denver, but make no mistake, Denver is included in the potential for flash flooding. We have to see where some of the heavier rain sets up and who gets a couple of rounds. But out of Colorado through Kansas into Arkansas into Missouri is where we'll be tracking some of the rainfall today. But that's some heavy rain out of Johnstown. Widespread amounts of 3 to 5 is what we're talking about for today. But how much rain have we seen in the past 2 days in some of these spots? This is a look at specifically over Oklahoma. Past 2 days where some of those rainfall totals have highlighted the yellow to orange, so that 2 to 5 inch range that we've already seen in spots. And you're noticing that nice little stripe that goes out of the northwestern part of the state and down towards Oklahoma City. So we'll see the heavy rain really tonight. I think it'll get even more enhanced. I will show you the timing of it into tomorrow, just because of some of the setup that we'll have in the atmosphere to enhance that. In terms of what we had in Colorado, the Pueblo Reservoir picked up an inch of rain. This was yesterday. Colorado Springs and just north of that into Monument. Over 3 inches of rain.
Not bad, right?
Not bad.
That speaks to the monsoon. And when you look at a place like Colorado, you head to the mountains, that's where the drought has been the worst in the state. So to see some of this rain move on through has been good, but given the topography, it's almost a guarantee that we're going to have debris flows. We've seen that this season, at least in the monsoon for New Mexico, right? With
Ruidoso.
Ruidoso. But the moisture itself, it's continuing to fetch in from the Pacific, which is such a unique perspective. When we're dealing with this very unusual weather pattern across the lower 48, where most people are enjoying these pleasant early fall temps.
I know. There are these isolated areas where not so much. And the temperatures, make no mistake, some of these areas where you have the rain, in addition to just overall the cooler temperature air mass, it's even cooler, departure from average. So this is a look right now where some of the moisture is. So you do have some storms across the panhandle of Texas, but we'll see things really broaden out throughout today. So in terms of that flash flood threat, we do have a level 2 threat. Again, it's just to the east of Denver, but Denver, even with the level 1, it kind of looks like a fish, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of
suiting for
that's true.
water relationship. But Kansas and then again into Arkansas, Joplin included in that for the level 2 threat for flash flooding.
That I-70 corridor in Kansas, while it's not known to show much, aside from a gradually inclining elevation if you're heading from Kansas City into Denver, but we got some rain. The Ozarks, Missouri and Arkansas too, we're still paying attention to where some of that moisture could set up. A lot of that might move in later this evening into Thursday. And it does have to deal with this boundary that's still draped across the central U.S., that ridge of high pressure kind of blocking that boundary from moving farther to the south. But as things begin to change, I think the Gulf Coast is going to come more into play as we head toward that holiday weekend. So we're thinking Houston, into New Orleans, right? The possibility of us seeing some of that rain.
It is a holiday weekend. Friday, big travel day. Saturday, I think, is an even bigger travel day. I saw there is a threat for severe weather that it gets introduced tomorrow. That would include Oklahoma City down towards Texarkana, Shreveport included in that. It's a level 1 threat, but good to put on the radar. And then in terms of just the timing for OKC, noticing that it's not a washout of a day, but definitely by the time you get into tonight, you'll start to see things fill in into those overnight hours.
Folks in Oklahoma are going to be wanting the sun.
They probably miss it, but it's been very below average with temperatures too. So I don't know.
Late August too, it can be a scorcher. So I guess pick your poison.